This fabulous piece of water behind me is Eyebrook Reservoir in the centre of rural Leicestershire. It's steeped in history. It was built in 1937 to help supply water to the local steel industry. In the Second World War, it was used by the dam busters as they practised how to use the bouncing bomb. But also, it's a fly fishing destination that's famous the world over, because here, fly fishing has gone on for decades. And that's why we're here today, to see the birth of a brand new fly fishing competition, the Angling Trust Loch-Style Team Championships.
I like the format. Format's very different, and it's certainly some very, very top rods here. I think it's going to be tough.
Well, this is a quality field of anglers. Many internationals out there. It's going to be a good match, but it's going to be a tough match.
Pressure. Just competing at this level, because a lot of top class guys here, you know, a lot of world Europeans, whatever, you know.
Great prize money, beautiful venue. Fair enough, the fishing's hard, but the same for everybody.
Quite excited about it because it's something different. We'll see how it works out in the long run, but for something different, it's just interesting.
So I've got some help today in the shape of this man here. This is Billy Rankin, former England captain and 6 caps for his country. Billy, just talk to us a little bit about Loch-Style fishing and what we're going to be seeing this weekend.
Well, it's a style of fishing where basically the boat is turned windward side on, so the both rods can fish equally, and it's drifting in the wind, and so no one can anchor or anything like that. So everyone gets a go at all the good places, you know. So that's why I love it as well, because it's a very fair sport. It's been going since the 1850s, where I think it was a match on Loch Leven between England and Scotland, and that tradition has been going now, well, since then. And every year we have 2 internationals against Ireland and Scotland, Wales and England.
Looking around here, there are some fantastic anglers on show.
Absolutely.
The spirit behind us, people laughing and
Yeah.
enjoying the day.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about this, is
Yeah.
that the kind of the teamwork of this event
Yeah.
is really special.
Absolutely, and the teams that do best are the teams that work together as a team. So I mean, that is pure and simple. You can have 6 individuals and they'll be useless. You know what I mean? But if you've got 6 guys really doing the same thing, it can be awesome.
So before we get into the competition proper, let's have a little further look into exactly what Loch-Style fishing is all about. Yesterday, Richard Slater, another former England captain, was kind enough to take me out there onto Eyebrook Reservoir to show me the tricks of the trade. So first things first, Loch-Style fishing takes place from a free drifting boat. Although you do use an engine to get you where you want to be, when you're fishing, you're not allowed to be under power.
Andy, clearly you've got to start at the top of the wind and end up at the bottom of it. Now clearly you're trying to drift over an area which you know holds fish. In all but the lightest of breezes, we would tend to use a device called a drogue. So this is effectively an underwater parachute that sits out behind the boat to slow the drift down. Okay, so at the moment, Andy, we're both fishing with floating lines. So as you'd expect from that name, the lines float on the surface, and the idea is you're then fishing very close to the surface. If you're fishing in a lake where the fish are deep, then you've got to get your flies down to them so that you stand the best chance of catching them. And the way that you're going to do that is by using the different densities of lines. In my box, I've probably got something like nearly 30 lines, all on their different spools. I can just change those spools across onto the reel as and when I choose to use it. So there's everything from floating lines through to very fast sinking lines, and lots of lines that do things in between as well. These lines are all known by their sink rates. So this line is a dye 7. That means it sinks at 7 inches a second. So if I count how long I leave it between casting out and starting the retrieve, I can work out how deep I've let the line go. Probably got 10 fly boxes with me. There's probably 4,000 flies there, something like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in the trout's diet, and so we will have a collection of flies that will be often mirroring what the trout are eating, but without showing you too much, there's not too much that's that colour in a trout's diet. Trout are territorial, so if you put something into their space, they'll be wanting to chase it off. And so we have our very brightly coloured patterns which tend to elicit that sort of a reaction. And then we'll have our more natural, lifelike, imitative patterns. So we've got patterns that will imitate damsel nymphs, as we've just seen. We've got patterns that will imitate shrimps. We've got patterns that will imitate buzzers. And then we've got patterns that imitate nothing that you'll ever see swimming in a lake, but they're still very, very good for catching trout at the right time.
One of the other things about, from what I've seen so far, is it's one thing knowing where the fish might be, but it's something completely else trying to get them to take your flies. And I suppose that must be one of the frustrations of this kind of fishing. You can put in a lot of casts without actually seeing a fish at the end of it.
That's right. I've often thought that during the course of an 8-hour match, if you're fishing your flies fast, you're probably casting 30 yards, and you're doing that and retrieving it at least once a minute. So that's something like 1,800 yards in an hour. That's just over a mile. In an 8-hour match, you've probably pulled the line 8 miles through the water.
Wow.
And if the fish aren't being cooperative, you can have pulled your flies for 8 miles through the water and still have nothing in the boat to show for it.
Incredible.
I'm hoping it's not like that tomorrow.
Slightly unusual in a fly fishing competition of this nature, instead of the fish being weighed, they're being measured. And this is how. Every single one of the boats that we're seeing today will be equipped with one of these. This is a measuring trough, and you can see here it's graduated in centimetres. And basically what happens is you get 1 point for every centimetre of fish you catch. So Billy, they're off.
They're off. Where are they going to go?
So we've got an interesting concept. There are 3 3-hour sessions today and 3 tomorrow. So it's a 2-day event, and the teams have got 6 members in each. Every member of that team effectively will fish twice. Tactically, the captains have got to kind of send out the right anglers in the right sessions, which is another interesting concept.
It is. You want probably your guy that could pick a couple of fish at the back end. The third session's going to be really difficult. You know, this first session you want your fishmongers. You know, your guys. you know are going to
people who can catch the fish fast.
Catch the fish fast, and while they're still. The thing is, early on they're susceptible to colour and things like that, flashy stuff. As the days goes on, they get used to that, and then they'll go more into the plainer, nymphier type colours.
Well, Billy, the match is underway, and we're looking at boat number 8.
Craig Barr.
Yeah, the man on the engine. We talk about anglers who've kind of been there and done it. He's a very highly decorated international, former England manager, of course, of the Loch-Style team.
Absolutely. And the brother who's a world champion, Ian?
Double world champion, wasn't he, Ian?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Extraordinary. So a family that are very well used to this sort of fishing. And I happen to know, chatting to Craig before the match, that yesterday, even though conditions were tough, he found a little edge and actually managed to catch 5 fish in practice.
Brilliant. Really good on a day like yesterday.
And there, Billy, first fish of the morning. That's boat number 9, and that's Renegades. And the man on the engine is John Hardy. That's an interesting first capture. Can you see what?
I think he's fishing a dive 7, and he's fishing quite slowly, and hanging the flies.
So in this competition, it's catch and release. The fish are measured, so the fish will be placed into a measuring trough. They'll be measured per centimetre and then safely returned. A good sign, we've seen 3 fish caught. The RAF team, the Fish Hawks, Alan Gamble's had a fish 2. So that's 3 fish we've seen so far this morning. There is boat number 8, Craig Barr, Flash Attack Reservoir Dogs, fish on. They've been hanging around. That's the area where the match started, and they've been there for an awfully long time.
Yeah.
We've certainly not seen many fish come out this morning. I think that's the 4th fish I've seen.
And the format of this match, you've got to really try to, you know, blank avoidance as a team is definite, especially in these conditions. On
the engine, Richard Slater, obviously hugely influenced by everything I taught him yesterday.
Obviously, yes. Yeah. I think he's reverted to your tactics after the early dry fly action.
Yeah.
But I think they've gone to high density lines and fishing deep. Seems to be the tactic, dive 7 and figure 8 retrieve, roly-poly, pulling, all mixed up together.
Here are the scores after the first session of the Angling Trust Loch-Style Team Championships. Team FNF Nymphomaniacs are in the lead, with Team Eleanor second and the Flash Attack Reservoir Dogs in third. Time for session number 2. Well, Billy, afternoon session now, the second session of this match, 6 sessions in all, and we're looking at boat number 15, which is Team FNF Nymphomaniacs, and they're leading after that morning session. They had 6 fish as a team, and all of those coming from one boat. And this boat has Gareth Jones and Alan Hughes. Well, Gareth and Alan have already had 1 fish in this session, so that will be extending their lead. And the team in second place are Richard Slater and his colleagues in Team Eleanor. And Billy, there is boat number 12 with Richard Slater and Graham Willis fishing for Team Eleanor. They've already had a fish in this session too, so
that's good in this graveyard session. I'd call this the graveyard because it's going to be the hardest.
Yeah, middle
hardest
of the day, sun
yeah.
at its highest.
Sun is high. They've had a good going over already. I think the best session might be later on this evening. You know, the sort of 6 to 7. We probably when normally we don't fish, and I think this might be a telling session. But the leaders seem to be just plodding away and getting the odd fish here and there and keeping them in contention, which is good news.
So Billy, there's boat 16, the other FNF crew, with Rob Edmonds and Matt Russell. So Rob fished this morning and was, I think, instrumental in that fantastic return for their boat, 6 fish in the morning, and Matt Russell's joined him. The squad system's interesting, isn't it? The fact you've got 6 anglers in your team and everybody gets to fish 2 sessions per day. I think it's a great system.
And say Rob's a local guy from Graffham, which is not very far away from here. And he's been an expert for years. Great at this sort of fishing. It's right up his street. Watch and learn. Watch this guy. He's one of the best at this sort of fishing.
So what line's he got on there, Billy?
It's definitely a dive 7. That's 7 inches per second. So
it's fishing right down on the bottom.
Right down, yeah. And going through the layers basically. Look, see a little just there's a fish looking at it. He'll just try to entice a take, hang it. You've got to sort of imagine your flies. That's the art of this fishing. Is you've got to think where they are, and and you always got to think there's a fish following it or looking at it or about to take. So it's incredible concentration. And look, like hanging it, he'll still think there's a fish there waiting, right? And then he's given up. Now he'll start the whole process again.
And there's our third placed team. That's the Flash Attack Reservoir Dogs, boat number 7, Tim Joyce and Phil Shaw-Brown. Phil has already had 1 fish in this session. So again, just continuing to put a little bit of pressure on the leaders. If we look at that top 3, FNF, who are at the top of the leaderboard at the moment, 264 centimetres, Team Eleanor in second on 216, and Flash Attack on 200. So actually, there's 64 centimetres between third and first, and that's only 2 fish, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what sort of the trout, I think, are measuring about sort of 40s, aren't they?
Yeah.
From what I've seen, they're not huge fish. They're stock fish.
No, I mean a really big fish is 50 centimetres, isn't it? I mean, a reasonable size. That's good 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds.
Well, look at that, Billy. Rob Edmonds, we've just turned to go back to boat 16. He's just had 1 fish, and there he's had another. So that's 3.
Brilliant performance. I've just been watching him, and it's like I'm watching him like a Swiss watch.
A masterclass.
And look how he's treating that fish. It's so quick that it'll hardly know what's happened to it.
Straight in the boat, straight on the measure. Just checking to make sure that the measurement, they get the maximum measurement, and the measurement is from the tip of the fish's nose to the end of its tail, so you get the maximum length for the fish.
Lovely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edmonds.
Well done, matey.
Back she goes. So here are the scores after session 2. FNF still lead from Eleanor. Bristol Cortland have moved into third. So Billy, final session of the day, and we're looking over at boat number 22, which is one of the Cortland team. Interesting, they are a team on the charge. We spoke earlier
Bristol
on.
boys, yeah, they're good.
They are good anglers.
Little lake runner.
In fact, they picked up 249 centimetres, and they've moved from 6th place into 3rd.
And the graveyard shift as well.
I know.
Yeah.
Now a little birdie tells me that the team has actually found one tactic that works, and all 4 of the anglers that are fishing this session have switched to it. And the interesting thing is, the line that I was using yesterday, which is partly a 5" per second sinker,
Yeah.
and partly a 7" per second sinker, so it's called a 5-7. That's the line they've all switched to.
They're getting down to the zone where the fish are, and attracting them up, and they're following it and taking it. And
This is where this competition really scores. The format is so brilliant because obviously that tactic has been discussed at the changeover.
yeah, absolutely.
Which you couldn't do normally
yeah. Unless you've got great communication between boats, and it's very hard to communicate when you're out in the wind like this. You can't get too close to a boat.
Well, Billy, the wind's getting up as we position ourselves by boat 21, which is the other Bristol crew, and that's Mark Miles and Tony Baldwin. There's some experience in that boat, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. So a few caps in there. Funny enough, I did my very first international in 1999 with Tony Baldwin, and we came with gold at Rutland. I'll never forget that. One of the most wonderful experiences of my life.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens in this session because the day is progressing. The fish now have had an awful lot of pressure. They've seen a lot of flies.
I think the crucial time will be after 6 o'clock. I'm really interested to see what happens because normal matches finish at 6 o'clock, and it's going to be an interesting last hour. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's another little shift here and there. You know what I mean? In the result pro, it's all open. It's a fantastic match.
And Billy, there's boat number 15, Tony Cartwright and Gareth Jones on the engine, casting in the hope of finding a few fish. And
very consistent, very consistent. They're doing really well, keeping their lead going, which is fantastic.
one of the interesting things about this fantastic stretch of water, Eyebrook, is that actually it's not that deep. Because it's so shallow, it heats up ever so fast. And the water temperature earlier on this morning was 15 degrees, it's already at 19.
Yeah.
So that's quite a high temperature for fish to feed in. They tend to switch off when it gets up near 20,
gets to
don't
about
they?
18, 20 is normally when they switch off. And it goes to it's about 70 degrees in old money. And that's when they eat rainbows. The good thing about rainbows is that they do actually feed quite high temperatures where other fish really don't bother. You know, the brown trout will very rarely get brown trout interested in this sort of temperature.
Well, there's boat 11, Billy, and that's
playing it very carefully. This fish could be crucial.
This is Team Eleanor, and
Eleanor,
that is Ed
absolutely.
Foster on his feet. And Ed will know the significance of this because Eleanor are snapping at the coattails of the event leaders.
Notice how carefully he's playing it, not like we saw earlier. Ooh.
Ed, of course, another England international.
Yeah.
Having some difficulty with his landing net there, I think. And that's John Hardy who's helping him out.
Yeah.
Just trying to get this fish under control. It's been a tough old session, this last one, hasn't it?
Terrible. Very tough.
That looks like a decent fish too. And it's safely in. Great angling, Ed Foster.
Lad.
Oh, what a relief.
What a relief.
You can tell by his face too. Look at that expression, isn't that
Oh,
wonderful?
he played that gingerly. I mean, he played like it was a 50-pound salmon.
I'll tell you what, also, that's a good sized fish, and in an event where, you know, it's centimetres of the fish that count, so the length of the fish rather than the weight, a good sized fish like that could make all the difference.
Well done, Ed.
As the boats returned to the pontoon, that fish caught by Ed Foster ended day one on a high for Team Eleanor. There were only 13 fish caught by the entire field of 44 anglers in that last tough session. Talk us through that one then, Mr. Foster.
Right, knew it was going to be hard. You're scratching for one fish. So when the wind dropped, you could get your flies deep enough and you could hang it properly, so you've got a chance of it locking up, and luckily it did twice and bumped another one as well, so very happy with 2 fish for the boat.
Watching you play that first one, I don't think I've ever seen anybody play a fish more carefully.
I played it very gently because none of the fish are getting deeply hooked. They're not taking fritz patterns, so just lip hooked, and I'm very glad I did play it gently. I said it pulled out, no problem. So yeah, I was gentle with it.
What have you learned from today taking into tomorrow?
Deep and slow, and something not too scary fly-wise, and just keep it down there when the conditions allow. If it blows tomorrow, it'll be even harder.
Well, that was a real tough day, wasn't it? Played out, I guess, how we thought it would. I think we went out looking for 1 fish per man per session, and I think that's about what we've done. We've got to count the scores up now and see where we're at, but I think overall we can be pretty pleased as a team.
Team FNF managed 4 fish though to keep themselves ahead, with Matt Griffiths and Rob Edmonds leading the way. Rob, talk us through your day. Looked like a tough one.
Yeah, it's a bit of a grueler really. Wind and sun. The water temperature's too high, there's no oxygen in it, the fish don't want to feed. It's difficult for everyone.
Just wondering what you've learned from today that you can take into tomorrow, obviously without giving anything away.
We just know it's going to be difficult. It's just you've just got to grind it out and just nick the odd fish and do the best you can.
So into the second and final day of the event, and the overnight scoreboard makes for very interesting reading. FNF lead with Eleanor second. A blank session for Flash Attack drops them down the table. The RAF Fishhawks are also making a charge, but it's the tiny gap between the teams at the top that's the talking point of the morning. So we've just found out the scores on the doors going into the second day. I cannot believe how tight this match is. 4 centimetres is separating the top 2 teams. So let's go and have a little word with them to see what's going on. 4 centimetres between you and second. This is close, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very close. It's not going to get any easier for any of the teams, so it's just a case of sticking with what we already know, just trying to grind a few fish out, and hopefully we'll stay up there.
Ridiculous. Any team right at the bottom could have a good day today and zoom up the leaderboard, so yeah.
Much difference in the conditions today? The wind seems to have dropped a wee bit.
I think there'll be a few more fish in the first session if the wind stays light, so we can all get deeper. I mean, that's the same for all the teams. I think as the wind picks up throughout the day, it's going to get harder.
We're going to do the same as yesterday. Unusually send 3 people out on the drives just for that first 3/4 of an hour to try and sneak out a couple of fish, and they're usually bigger on the drive.
Well, Billy, morning of the second day.
Different day, Andy.
Oh, incredible, isn't it? There's very little wind. I mean, it's still warm. We're looking at boat number 18, which is the Pittsford Pirates, and Andy Taylor and Lee Patton, and you can see on the end of the boat that a fish is being landed. But the interesting stuff in this match will be happening elsewhere as the landing net goes in.
Very tight at the top, Andy.
It is. Tight is an understatement. I mean, we're talking 4 centimetres here between
Absolutely,
the top
and that's
2
ridiculous,
teams.
Isn't it? Talking half of a fish tail.
Oh, it's extraordinary, isn't it? And after a whole day of fishing, 22 boats on the water all day, 60 odd anglers separated by 4 centimetres is amazing. Do you know what's also interesting is that the field, I know there are teams that are a little bit adrift, but actually, if this place switches on today and some fish are caught, some of the guys in the middle could easily start catching the 2 at the top, which is the FNF team and Eleanor.
Well, today's, as I say, is a different day, Andy, because you can control your flies, you can control your line, you can think 3D in the water, whereas yesterday it was just like get it out there and get it deep as possible and hope something hangs on. But this, you've got tactics will come into this and systems they've worked out.
So Rob Edmonds and Matt Griffiths, Rob on the point and Matt on the engine. They blew the field apart in the morning session yesterday, 6 fish, which was far and away more than anybody else caught. If they can do that again to set their day off perfectly, that will give them a huge advantage in trying to win this competition?
They seem to be employing the same tactics they were yesterday. They seem to be on a die, you know, a heavy sinking line and lure tactics. But I mean, I've got a feeling that something more innovative might be better today.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, obviously the conditions help with presentation of that, but
also the fly life, Andy. That you can start. I've just seen a damsel just go flying past me. You know, so yesterday there wasn't anything going flying past anyone.
Just waves. I also happen to know that 3 of the anglers in the Eleanor team in this morning's session are fishing dry fly.
Well, if it was
all fish on.
All fish on, fish on.
That's good angling. Matt Griffith's in there.
Look at that. Oh,
no
fantastic.
messing about. That was very close to the boat, that take too, wasn't it? Big smile from Rob Edmonds there, and you can see the trough going into operation. So that's exactly what these guys need. Something they're doing is working. You could tell that from Rob's face, couldn't you?
Yep.
Back it goes straight. They're not messing about, are they? That's fantastic.
They've got a method. They're plugging away at it, and they'll keep at it all day. If it works,
already
it works.
back in.
It doesn't, Andy.
From hooking and landing that fish to being back out is less than a minute, Billy.
Yeah. Oh.
And Matt's already fishing again. That's fantastic. And here we are with boat 12. Billy, this is Richard Slater.
Yelling the boys.
They've already had 1 fish in the boat, in Donaldson, catching early on in the session.
Totally different tactics from the other guys. It seems they've gone more for upper layers of the water, which I quite agree. We're seeing a lot of fish moving.
We are today, aren't we?
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
we didn't see yesterday at all, really. There were a few fish jumping.
Yeah, jumpers are different than feeders.
There's feeding activity, isn't there?
Yeah. And I would say damsel flies, that's why they're getting a quite fast retrieve, because a damsel moves quite quickly. You think when you see a damsel, it's like a small fish, but it's a damsel fly. It's the larvae, you know, that works in the water. You're looking in the top sort of 6 foot. Hopefully with this clear water you can drag a fish up. The fish don't look down, they will look up. So if they're hanging around 6 foot down, you've got a nice intermediate line that sort of sinks at about 1.5 inches a second. It will attract the fish, and they see the profile of the fly above them, they'll come up and grab it for sure.
Looking at the kind of the pattern of the match yesterday was interesting. If you look at the fish returns, so in the first session there were 29 fish caught by the fleet, in the second session 26, but in that last session, which was an absolute grueler, there were only 13 fish caught. And do you know the most amazing thing is Craig's team, the entire 4 anglers in the Flash Attack Reservoir dogs, none of them had a single pull in the entire session. And I'll tell you what, I know how much that hurt Craig Barr, because he is the ultimate competitor. But the measure of some of the people in this competition, the reason they're such good competitors is their quality, their ability to fight back, isn't it? Because
absolutely.
He went away yesterday.
This is so open, Andy. This is so open, this match. It could be, one session could absolutely destroy it and, you know, bring another team completely into it.
I know he went away yesterday evening seething, and he's come back today refreshed and firing on all cylinders. Well, there's boat 7, Billy, the other boat in the Flash Attack team, Tim Joyce and Gary Morris, and they've just boated a fish. Interestingly, that Craig and Lee seem to be struggling a bit, so something these guys are doing is working. And this area, I've seen so many fish moving today.
There's a lot of fish. We've just seen 4 fish caught really in the last sort of hour here, and we've seen fish on top moving. I think fish are crashing up on damsels and also feeding midge.
Boat 16 again, Billy, back up with the race leaders, the FNF Nymphomaniacs, and there is Matt Griffiths. Another fish.
That's 2 we've seen him had today, isn't it? First couple of hours. So we've seen a lot more fish caught today, Andy, and it's only two hours into the match.
I get the sense that this is a team on the charge. They know they're ahead and they're just trying to get the pedal down, aren't they?
Yeah,
just trying to make sure that nobody can catch them. It's interesting, we've also seen the Flash Attack team. We know one of their boats has had 4 fish. You know, some of those teams in the middle section, if they have a good morning, they could well close the gap here. The fish were certainly on the feed in that first session of the day. Rob Edmonds and Matt Griffiths landed 11 of them in an amazing performance to keep them top of the table. Eleanor could only manage 6. The Flash Attack team are fighting back 2 with 9. In total, 49 fish were landed in that morning session. Eyebrook is springing into life with 2 sessions remaining. Well, Billy, that first session today was extraordinary, and we're watching boat 11, the team from Eleanor, with Ed Foster on board, the daddy of the team. Just has a little look over his shoulder at us. This is going to be a really interesting session because these guys have got to do something to get themselves back into this match. And look, if you look above the boat, there's a red kite.
Unbelievable.
This place, Eyebrook, is an extraordinary place. It's a site of special scientific interest. There's all sorts of wildlife here, and imagine fishing with that hovering above your head. Isn't that an amazing sight?
A couple of teams this morning have run away with it a little bit.
We started the day with the team from Eleanor 4 centimetres behind FNF, and now the gap is 230 because
isn't that, I told you a session would do
amazing.
It. I told you a session would make the difference. You know, someone could run away with it.
But doesn't it show a huge difference you can find where the fish start to feed? Because if we look at the sessions yesterday, 29 fish in the morning, 26 in the middle, 13 that grueler in the evening.
Well, absolutely.
This morning, 49 fish in the first session. Now it'd be really interesting to see how Ed Foster gets on in this, because out of all of the anglers here, no one has practiced more on this venue. Ed's put serious hours in here at Eyebrook. Of course, he owns Eleanor Fishery, which is one of the most famous, they call it a small still water. It actually isn't. It's a very big piece of water, isn't it? But terrific fishery. And he's not that far away from here, so he's been able to put the hours into practice to find what works. So he wasn't fishing in the morning session. He was acting as a controller. I want to see what Ed Foster makes of this, with the fish feeding a little bit better. And Billy, the other interesting thing is, a team really on the charge is Craig Barr's Flash Attack Reservoir dogs, and there's another fish for them. They had 9 fish in that morning session. They've clearly found a tactic that's working here. Another fish for them for boat 7. Well, look at this, Billy, the granddaddy of them all, Ed Foster, boat 11.
Right on time.
Yeah, the Eleanor fight back is on its way.
Absolutely.
Now, obviously, we don't know yet what's happening with the FNF anglers in this session, but Ed safely got that one in the net. He got that one a lot quicker than the fish he landed yesterday, didn't he?
He was a little less nervous than he was yesterday evening after that grueler.
Well, I think the competition has lit the fire in him, actually. His adrenaline will be pumping, and getting a fish like that right close to the dam wall, which is the deepest part of the reservoir from what they were saying earlier, sort of 40 feet deep. So fishing fast sinking lines, big smile.
It's where the fish are most comfortable, and the water temperature's gone up. They'll be right downstairs, as he's just described.
A little bit of activity on boat number 16, FNF again, Billy, and there's the ever reliable Rob Edmonds, who's just, as a fish leaps from behind the boat, caught another one. They had a fantastic morning.
Brilliant.
Rob and the team that he's involved in here seem to be running away with this competition. I get the feeling that this session could be the one that wins or loses the match. Unless something triggers later and everything tees off, they could extend their lead so far ahead of Eleanor in this session that the guys in red caps won't be able to catch them. Well, Billy, it's not all about the leaders. There's the boat occupied by the RAF team, the Fishhawks, and Phil Thomas on the engine, playing another fish. They've had a little bit of a surge, haven't they?
Yeah, they
today?
have. They have indeed. Yeah, and they've, I think that's 4 fish now, at least 4 fish.
Another good sized trout, and interestingly that they're keeping that one in the net to measure it on the gauge. These RAF boys are serious competitors too, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely,
They fish in some big competition inter-services matches. Yep. And of course the other thing, the great tradition of this place, of Eyebrook, its links with the RAF and the Dam Busters. Lovely to see the guys fishing here and doing well. So the RAF Fishhawks brought the penultimate session to a close and moved up to 4th on the leaderboard. FNF are still ahead though, with Eleanor in 2nd. The Reservoir Dogs are snapping at their heels after another good session. Well, Billy, we're into the last 3 hours, the very final session of this championship. It's been a brilliant match so far, and I think we're looking in boat 15, which contains Tony Cartwright and Gareth Jones of the FNF team, at the potential winners of the competition. There are other boats elsewhere on the lake. We'll go and find them in a second. You know, this has been a really interesting competition, and if you look at the statistics of fish caught, well, it kind of tells a story its own. Today, Team FNF have caught 16 fish, but Team Eleanor, who are in 2nd place, have only caught 12, 4 fish fewer than the FNF team. And that's what's allowed them to open that 184 centimetre lead. But do you know the team that are actually probably winning the day today?
Who's that?
It's Flash Attack. They've had 16 fish too, and compare that with the dreadful return they had yesterday of only 6 fish all day. Remember, they had one session that was completely blank. Their competition was actually killed on day 1. Had they been in the running properly, I reckon we'd have had a 3-horse race rather than a 2. Well, Billy, here's the other FNF boat, and as you can see, they're not in any mood to let this lead drop, because there is Matt Griffiths on the engine, as we saw him earlier on today.
Playing that one a bit steady.
Yeah, he is.
Must be near the end of the competition.
They have put in a fantastic performance.
And he's got it. Look at that.
Brilliant piece of angling. Good sized fish too. The average size of the fish in this competition has been about sort of mid-40s, 44 centimetres.
There's been a 50, hasn't there? 55?
There's been a 50 and a 54, but the average, the kind of the reliable stock size is about 44. And if the Eleanor team have got any chance of catching up, they're going to have to catch 4 fish more than FNF.
Quite a large target in 3 hours.
It's a big ask in these conditions, isn't it?
In probably the most challenging of conditions as well. But I think I've seen people fishing dry fly, which is interesting. It's a little cloud cover, the lights changed.
Well, we're an hour and a quarter into the final session, Billy, and there for Team Eleanor in boat number 12, we have Ian Donaldson and Graham Willis, and you mentioned the possibility of people fishing dries, and that's exactly what Ian Donaldson on the engine is doing. Why do you think he switched over?
Well, I think it's overcast. There's a chance of getting a feeding fish. They're covering both bases. One is fishing high density line still, and the other one is going for an opportunity of feeding fish. And hopefully to take his dry fly. He'll probably take it more convincingly than the sinking line tactics.
And there's boat number 8, Billy, Flash Attack Reservoir Dogs, the man on the engine, Craig Bart, the team that have probably produced the most exceptional performance today, but surely they can't come from behind. We know they've had 2 fish already in this session. That will be their 3rd.
Great performance today.
Yeah, they must be too far back, surely. They need to catch 6 fish more, 7 fish more than FNF to get to overtake them at the top of the table. It would be an incredible comeback.
Incredible performance, and the Nymphomaniacs have got to do something really bad to lose that, and they're catching.
What's the kind of mentality when you're in that situation, when you know that you've potentially blown it by having one bad session? What's that like?
Well, it's get back your pride, get back your mojo. You know, it's just like, you know, you had a bad day. Let's forget about it and catch fish. You know, every dog has his day, and a reservoir dog as well.
Oh, very good.
Very good, eh? Every dog has his day, and you know, you got to be able to take those bad days on the chin and then try to get a bit of pride back, and that's what these guys are doing in spades, aren't they?
Yeah. Class
Brilliant
performance, actually.
Brilliant performance today. On the dries.
Oh, wonderful stuff.
Wonderful stuff. Well done, Ian. Great change of tactic.
It does go to show that they will come up. Exactly what you were saying a couple of minutes ago. Ian Donaldson on dry fly tactics, boat number 12 for Eleanor. The question is, how long can he make this work for, Billy? Because they've got a lot of time to make up for. It's one of those tactics, isn't it? If it switches on, you can pick off 3 or 4 fish. Very satisfying when you pick a tactic, change to it, and it comes off.
And it's a lovely visual, and it's the mechanics of it are quite difficult because you've got to make sure the fish takes the fly properly and then lift into it, not strike too hard. Get in! Good man! Well done, Ian.
And there we can see the boatman is going through that process of measuring Ian's fish. So we've seen a fish to the FNF boys at the top of the lake, and now Ian has struck a blow back for Team Eleanor, but is it too late? Well, after Ian's capture on the dries, we've moved up to see boat 15 with Tony Cartwright and Gareth Jones, and I can tell you they've had 1 fish so far in the session. There's no let up for Eleanor, is there? Every time they get 1 fish, these guys
keep going, don't they? Brilliant performance.
It is brilliant.
Absolutely fantastic.
And there's boat 11 with Ed Foster on the engine in almost exactly the same spot we saw him yesterday, Billy, when he had those 2 fish in that grueling last session. But the bad news for Ed is he's only actually had 1 fish in this one, and that's not going to be enough to close the gap. So it's all over, final session. The boats are returning, and now it's just a case of counting up those fish to see who's won this championship. So here are the final scores from the first ever Angling Trust Loch-Style Team Championship. The FNF Nymphomaniacs proved to be uncatchable on the final day. 6 fish in the final session took them to 1,488 points. After an incredible comeback, the Flash Attack Reservoir Dogs were second. They had 7 fish in the last 3 hours. Clearly their tactics were right on day 2, but they were still 5 fish away from the top. The RAF Fishhawks claimed third, and Team Eleanor, who gambled it all in an attempt to win the competition in the last session, ended up out of the money. So Team Eleanor shoot for first and end up with 4th. And a great performance from the Fishhawks, who were nowhere this morning. Brilliant performance from them. £1,000 for the RAF Fishhawks. They were nowhere in the competition going into today's 6 fish yesterday. They've produced a fantastic performance, a great comeback, just not enough on the day to overtake the eventual winners. £1,500, second prize for Flash Attack Reservoir Dogs. And in the end, there was never really any doubt, was there? From the moment they took a lead on the first day, there was just no one able to catch the FNF Nymphomaniacs, the first ever champions of this fantastic event. So Gareth, you've been involved in a lot of big comps. What was this one like from the inside?
Well, it's quite cool actually, because we had the 3 sessions, so you're actually getting to see an insight into other people's fishing as well. The other thing as well is you've got other people in your boat as well who are going to see what you're doing. But it's up to you then to do it better than everybody else. So the information was getting around a lot quicker than it normally does. So you couldn't really hide anything, but you know, it was a really cool format, and I think it worked really well. You know, it's the first time it's been held. You've got 11 good teams there, and I think next year they'll probably get a full house. So I'm really looking forward to next year's event as well.
So Matt, just talk us through your tactics for this match. It was an incredible performance, 16 fish, absolutely brilliant.
Well, depth was the main key, and distance. Casting quite a long line, counting it down quite a fair lot, and trying to control the fly down there and get the hang right as well. A lot of fish came like at the deepest part of the retrieve, more or less just as the belly was lifting up off the deck. The range, the distance, the depth and everything.
That man Griffiths is a bit special, isn't he?
Yeah, he can cast a long way. Like we all like to think we can cast, but Matthew he's a carpenter by trade. He's got very fast hand speed, so even though he's a slight guy, his line speed is exceptional. So he's casting like 50 yards of line. Now, most guys out here are casting 30 yards of line. It's putting him in a different game to everybody out there. The distance has given him an extra probably 10 feet in depth during the retrieve. So he's shown it to fish that I've never seen anybody else's fly.
Now, there's one other thing that you had about your performance, which is a fly that you guys have used successfully. So just show us that and talk us through what it is.
Yeah, we've got a fly called, well, it's Castus Kabubi, but the flitch is quite intense and quite bright. I was using the same fly, but a fresh fly every drift to keep the colour in the fly and keep the brightness. I think that was a key.